Hey everyone, welcome back into the Pressing On podcast. I'm your host, Richie Reeder, and I have the honor of leading our organization in serving hospitalized families. One of the many ways that we serve hospitalized families is through this podcast, so thanks for listening. Our goal here with the Pressing On podcast is to amplify voices of perseverance and highlight the journey of hospitalized families so that everyone who listens will be encouraged to press on through tough times holistically. You can learn more about my family's hospital and transplant journey, as well as take advantage of all of our free resources at pressingon.org. For the latest Pressing On news, volunteer opportunities, and program information, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, and you can follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to stay up to date on our journey as we serve hospitalized families. Just search for Pressing On PGH on most social platforms. Well, in this episode, we talk with my friends Garret and Tara Welsh. Their family has shown resilience in the face of a critical diagnosis as their second son, Theo, was diagnosed with a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, CDH for short, during a second trimester appointment in January 2020. The rare diagnosis caused them to move temporarily to Philly to give birth at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and prepare for a unique and tedious surgery to prepare the defect. Leaving their home, their dogs, their oldest son Bennett with family in Pittsburgh to travel to CHOP was a tough season for Garret and Tara, but they did what was best for their baby and found strength in their faith, their family, and their friends. Garret and Tara Welsh have been married for 11 years, and they have 3 active boys, Bennett, Theo, and Zeke. Their family resides in Irwin, Pennsylvania, where Garret is a union carpenter and Tara has a background in healthcare. They're very active in their community of faith at Reclamation Church and love spending time out on the lake. I think you're really going to be encouraged by their journey as they share their story in a real and vulnerable way. Give a listen. Well, hey everyone, welcome back into the Pressing On podcast. I'm your host, Richie Reeder, and I'm sitting here with my friends Tara and Garret Welsh. Guys, thanks for joining the podcast tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. The Welsh family has shown resilience in the face of a critical diagnosis as their second son, Theo, was diagnosed with a congenital diaphragmatic hernia, CDH, during a second trimester appointment in January of 2020. So we want to get into their story of perseverance and learn from everything that they've been through. My wife Reagan and I have known them for many years. They are wonderful people, and we're excited to have them on the podcast. So, guys, we know you very, very personally, but let's share with our listeners on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about where you guys grew up, how you met. Let them get to know you personally as well.
So I grew up in North Huntingdon, PA, locally. And Garret?
I grew up in West Mifflin, PA, just not far from her, but
Yeah, we met through a mutual friend in college of mine, an old roommate, and been hanging out ever since.
Yeah.
Nice. What were some of the things that you guys did when you first got together? Like, what did dates look like? I mean, like, I know you guys spend a ton of time, like, out on the lake and stuff as a family now, but, like, what were you guys into? Like, what was dating? What did that look like when you guys first got together?
That's actually where we met also.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, but I mean, I lived down in Oakland, going to school down at Carlow University, so we spent a lot of time in the old stomping grounds of uh, Oakland and up the lake. A lot of family time and stuff too, even when we were dating.
we're both fairly close with our families, but we were always with people.
Awesome. Terry, you mentioned your training and your degree and stuff like that. I know that you have a background in healthcare. Do you mind sharing with everybody, you know, some of the stuff that you've done in the field of healthcare?
Yeah, I went to Carlow University for my bachelor's and my master's, actually. I'm a nurse practitioner now. I've done just about everything as far as working as an RN on an oncology unit, um, long-term care, personal care, internal medicine, just, yeah, hospice through our son. Got a lot of pediatric
Yeah.
specialty training inadvertently that I
Mm-hmm.
never wanted, but uh, yeah, the
You've got
medical
degrees
background
that
of
you
things.
earned, and then you've got honorary degrees now that you've, yeah.
Right.
Well,
That
let's
were
let's
just
get in.
acquired.
Right. I always say that my wife Regan got her medical mama degree and her nursing degree and so many degrees along the way that she may not have the paper for, but yes, there's definitely a level of competency that you gain when you're taking care of a child with certain needs. So let's get into that specific story of perseverance with your son Theo. We want to highlight on the podcast today. Tara, we'll start with you. I mean, you got a very scary diagnosis during your second trimester with Theo. And I remember us meeting up with you guys very shortly in the days after that. Can you take a few minutes to walk people through Theo's diagnosis of CDH and what the doctors told you at that time?
Yeah. So, like you said earlier, Theo's our second son. First pregnancy, totally uneventful, with myself and with our first son, Bennett. Um, Went to the anatomy scan, which turns out is when a lot of, if not all of the CDH diagnoses are made now. Um, Went to the initial anatomy scan, was told, you're having a boy. We just couldn't see the fourth chamber of his heart.
Hmm.
So they had set up another ultrasound at a different facility for us to go to. And honestly, I wasn't going to go
Hmm.
because I'm not a very good patient. Um, but ended up making the appointment, went um, after she got the ultrasound. Obviously, the tech didn't lead on to anything. It just took a really long time.
Hmm.
Um, and then we just waited for a very long time. And at that point, I kind of had a thought that maybe something wasn't right. And then she asked us to leave the room that we were in. And that's when I knew something was wrong.
Hmm.
Um, so we walked down the hall. The doctor was sitting there and he told us, your son, we saw in the ultrasound that he has a hole in his diaphragm, um, which I had never heard anything about, even with all the degrees and everything. And he said, he has a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. It can be on either side. Theo's happened to be on the left side. Um, and then I just remember kind of going blank. He was throwing out a lot of things. There's a lot of unknowns with CDH. Even at that time, they weren't sure of everything that was up in Theo's chest cavity, because the diaphragm keeps everything, where it's supposed to be, what's supposed to
Hmm.
be in the chest, what's supposed to be in the abdomen. And that was not the case. So everything just kind of floated up through the hole and was sitting in Theo's chest.
Hmm.
So at that point, it was, a lot of conversation of, do you want to continue with the pregnancy? Um, and that really wasn't even an option for us. That wasn't even getting that information. I don't think that even remotely crossed. I know it didn't cross either of our minds. It
Talk
was we were
talk a
gonna
little bit
do.
talk a little bit more about that because that wouldn't be everyone's response. Why was that your response in that moment?
We were blessed with a child, and we were gonna take care of that baby, whether or not it was, he was perfect in the eyes of, the doctors or whomever. Um, he was still our son. We knew we were having a little boy, just 10 minutes prior to that, we were talking about what we were going to name him and, had a
Hmm.
little gender reveal, and that was our son. So whether this was going to be his path, that we were on it. And now it's all hands on deck. Now it was like fight or flight mode. What do we do now to make this right?
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love it. Garrett, I know for me, I always want to fix things. And as a dad, I think that many times that can kind of be our tendencies. And I know sometimes my wife just needs me to listen. Like, But like when you guys found out that news, like what was your response? What was going through your head? What were you thinking at that time?
Unlike my beautiful wife here, I am not medically inclined. So uh, initially, I was scared, obviously, and just unsure. When he gave us that news, he told us right away about two or three different places that specialize in that care, that
Mm-hmm.
surgical care. Um, we knew our children's could do it, but they do like 10 a year. Philly does like 10 a day. So
Mm-hmm.
my version of fixing in that moment was we very quickly, I mean, I, I think it might have been the same day.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that's kind of what I'm remembering that we were right down the street from our house, and we were slowing the car down, and we were like, okay, what are we gonna do? And I think we just need to commit that we're gonna do this because
We were going to relocate. We weren't entirely sure where yet, but we knew that we
Mm-hmm.
weren't going to stay in Pittsburgh.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's not a matter of odds. We know that everything is in God's hands, and we're grateful for that. But we have to do our due diligence too. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, we wanted to go somewhere we could drive and somewhere that if family emergency or whatever came up. So Philly was our option. It was Philly, Florida, or Colorado or something.
Uh, Maryland. It would have been Johns Hopkins Children's also,
Gotcha.
but I
Mm-hmm.
wanted somewhere that could. CHOP allowed us to give birth at the Children's
Yeah,
Hospital,
that was the big part.
so
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't need to be transported, stabilized, and then transported to the Children's Hospital. I could give birth directly at the Children's Hospital, and he would just simply go downstairs.
Yeah.
So that was a big factor. And I mean, I looked into the other options and I just had peace with the
Mm-hmm.
Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. A lot of great reviews, and it was, called, got everything set up within that week for the following week, and it was all hands on deck.
Yeah, we from our
Mm-hmm.
first communication to our first trip out there was less than a week, I think, and
Wow.
we were
Yeah.
yeah. So again, my fixing was all hands on deck planning, and
Yeah.
And chauffeuring
lo-
me back and forth.
logistics.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I mentioned before about, you know, the dates 2020. When people hear 2020, that raises all kinds of emotions. And I've talked to a lot of families that were facing really tough things during that season. But I mean, everything that you guys were going through was happening during COVID, one of the most unique seasons of our lives. I guess my question is, how did everything that was going on in the world complicate or maybe simplify? Because I've heard families talk about both ways, complicate or simplify the life altering healthcare trauma that you guys were going through at that time. How would you respond to that?
It definitely took a turn.
Yeah.
Because this all started like COVID was becoming a thing, but it hadn't come over yet. So, we were obviously very hyper focused on, you know, getting to Philly, how we were going to make this happen, how we were going to get our other son with us to do that. And then, like, mid-February hit. I mean, it was within, a couple weeks, and then everything hit the fan, and it was like, okay, we can't bring Bennett because we're going from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia was a very hot spot for COVID at the time, and was completely shut down. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
take an almost two? He wasn't even two at that time. One to a city apartment, if we can even get an apartment at that point, we weren't sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or we leave him here. So then, that aspect of things, at least, I mean, I think also for Garrett too, was that was one of the hardest things, was knowing it was almost like a countdown in my head every night, like putting him to bed. That made me really hate COVID in a whole other way, just because it was like, I don't know when I'm going to get to do this again. And it's hard to leave one to take care of another that I've never met yet.
She skipped a lot of obstacles. So we had a couple months to again, logistically to plan this. But again, there was no Ronald McDonald House available because of COVID.
Yeah.
There was
Host
Host for Hospitals, which
is
is
great.
a fantastic organization out there. If anybody's going that direction, look into that. It's amazing.
Hosts for Hospitals. Is that what you said?
It's a privately owned small little. I spoke to the owner directly, and they didn't have anything that for our scenario at the time because of people didn't open their home at the time, basically. Because of that.
They go alongside people that offer out rooms that are close to the hospital, or
pool house or a basement, anything. I mean, there were some very cool scenarios, but for the
not when it's a global pandemic.
For the time that we were there, it was going to be like an hour drive, and we weren't willing to do that. So I have to give a giant shout out to my Aunt Barb. My cousin at the time was living out there for college, and she had been apartment hunting for her on and off. And she called me. She's like, I want to help you with this. So she started scouring, I mean, days, weeks, night and day, calling, landlords and calling up, apartment management companies and explaining our situation. And
because people weren't renting out, they weren't showing, they weren't renting. Right. It was just like the world shut down.
And we were kind of specific on what we needed. We wanted, fairly close to the hospital, but that's expensive. And, long story short, Aunt Barb came through. She found us a very great place and had a lot of family rally around us to help afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia for
downtown Philly
over 7 weeks. So,
wow.
Hey everyone, I'm Olivia Reeder, and I love helping my parents serve hospitalized families through our Pressing On programs. Here at Pressing On, we're committed to meeting tangible needs, and we have various programs that help resource hospitalized families physically, emotionally, and spiritually, including our Hospital Care Package program, Transplant Backpack program, Gas Card program, Crisis Coaching program, and Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh program. So if you or a family you know is affected by a long-term hospitalization or is on the journey of pediatric transplant, we'd love to come alongside you with free resources during this time. Let me encourage you to visit our website at pressingon.org to sign up for our free resources or make a referral to one of our programs. Visit pressingon.org today. Thanks so much.
Let's pause the story for a second right there to talk a little bit about some of the things that people did that were super helpful for you guys. Because I think, families like ours that have spent time in the hospital, and a lot of the families that we serve through Pressing On, they've experienced things that are super helpful with their family, with the patient, with the child in the hospital, with siblings back home, maybe taking care of their house, like your Aunt Barb trying to find, a place to live. And then there's other things that, people have kind of identified that, well, maybe that wasn't so helpful along the way. But when you guys think through your mind of these were some things that really made us feel seen, loved, valued, super helpful, like what are some things that come to mind for you guys?
There was a lot of, prior to leaving, like gift cards and things too, especially, at the time, like Grubhub, stuff that we could order food, because obviously we weren't going out to eat or, hanging out. But just tangible ways of things, people reaching out and not expecting a conversation or, a lengthy update. It was just, thinking about you, praying for you, just knowing that, just because we were going through that, people hadn't completely forgotten. But sending food too.
We went out with coolers of food, which was very helpful.
Yeah.
Mm.
She said the Grubhub thing again during the time was priceless for us because, and we had conversations prior, like if you don't, you know, me or you with us, the conversations were like, if you don't give people ways to help too,
Right.
they're going to help in ways that aren't helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was,
Which is hard.
yeah, that's a very hard situation that, people just want to love on you, and sometimes it's not beneficial for anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
But people need to eat.
right,
But
Yeah.
people aren't also going to like, I don't know, for me it's very hard to ask for help. So if you
Mm.
can just fill a need that you know that has to be filled,
Sure.
people, especially, I was a new mom again and breastfeeding and stuff, and just knowing that a meal was not even on the realm of things that I had to think about. It was just coming or it was there already. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
And cards. I had a friend who wrote me uh, cards that I didn't open right away that were for like when I was feeling in the moment. So, if you're angry was like the title on the card. And
Oh,
then she
nice.
wrote a little thing, if you need a laugh, if you need, a prayer, if you need, I mean, it was probably at least 20, 30 cards. And it was, I could go in the closet and cry and just look at something and to get a good laugh out. And it was something that was done prior to us even leaving, to knowing what I needed. I didn't know what I needed. So it
Right.
was fun to look through those and be like, oh, I do need a laugh now.
That is super creative. So, I mean, not only do we have Aunt Barb, who is helping you guys scour the area in Philadelphia to find the perfect place to live right in the midst of COVID when there aren't many options. You guys felt blessed by Grubhub gift cards because they could actually like deliver food and stuff like that, because obviously nobody's going and sitting down for a meal at that point in time. But you had a friend who wrote specific prompts on cards based on what you might feel or need on a certain day. I've never heard anybody share
Yep.
that before. There's somebody that's listening to the podcast right now that's going to steal that. And that is a
Oh,
great
it
thing to
was
share.
great.
So,
Catherine right
yeah.
there. Yeah. It was, I still have them. I kept all of them because I was like, I need this one today, and I know I'm gonna need this one tomorrow, so I'm gonna put that one on the top of the stack. Like
Oh, man.
it,
Shout
it,
out to another wonderful person right there. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, that's a
Um,
good one.
Maybe you guys can take us back into the story now. And Garrett, you alluded to, things got a little bit tougher, the next week there. But, once you got settled in Philadelphia, what did things look like, after, he was born and you proceeded with the surgery? Walk us through that time for your family.
it was. I don't know. It was for me. It was as wild of a ride as it started. We got there early. We got there like
2 weeks.
2 weeks early because they wanted to keep checks and stuff.
Right.
And the other events that happened made it hard to and stressful to even commute to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I would, even just leaving our apartment to get 8 minutes away
Oh well, yeah.
was a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
There were riots and things happening in Philly at the time that
Mm-hmm.
leaving made it difficult.
They had
Coming back,
lots of roads closed, and like,
Hmm.
yeah.
yeah, it was very chaotic out there. So just the commuting back and forth at first, and then when he was born, it was basically like,
We were very grateful that I gave birth at the same hospital.
Yeah,
At
seriously.
that point, it
yeah.
was quite a
Mm-hmm.
blessing that we didn't have to, or he didn't have to leave to then go be at another
And
facility.
then us, wait for her to be comfortable to leave enough to leave, and all that. I mean, she was up and walked down to the NICU within the same few hours after he was born,
That fight or
Wow.
flight.
and
Wow.
we just that was our life. I mean, we woke up every morning at don't know, probably 6:30, 7 o'clock, and got ourselves around, went there, and we were sitting, 3 feet away from him for till probably 8 or 9 o'clock at night most times.
Um, he told us that I wouldn't be able to hold him. We probably wouldn't hear him cry. Um, and then they were going to pass him through a little window into another room where the team was going to be to intubate him, put lines in to stabilize him in his airway, and then get him down to the NICU. We did hear him cry, which is probably why he needed treated for aspiration pneumonia too. But for me, the doctor, it felt like a lifetime. Garrett said it was literally, 2 seconds. I got to hold him.
We were very, very fortunate with the doctor we had that was delivering us. She was super sweet and extremely. That whole team. I mean, I remember a lot from that team of nurses and stuff. And when it was go time, like the flood of people that came in to the room we were in and the room next door. Like when she said pass him through a window, it was literally a window like that you would have in your house. They just put the window open, and as soon as they took the baby from her, we didn't get him before the window, did we?
She handed him. I gave birth. She did a quick.
Yeah, that was only a second or two.
But it felt that really helped me.
I followed them over to the window, watched that for a minute.
They pushed my bed over because I had an epidural and couldn't walk over. So I was sitting there looking through the window at everything. And then they got him intubated. They brought him back over just to let me see him again. And then they wheeled him down to the NICU where we stayed for not as long as we thought we would because God is good.
I mean, they had us prepped for
they said a minimum of 3 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
To plan for.
I mean, they threw the year number out a few times.
Yeah.
And there were kids in the NICU with us that were just right. I mean, there were no walls or anything. It was just a big open with curtains. And the one little girl, I mean, she never left.
She was moving up to what's the next one?
She was no longer allowed to stay. She was too old for the NICU anymore.
Wow.
So instead of graduating home, she was just graduating to another area of the hospital.
You said, Tara, that he's born on June the 10th. Take us through what that looked like, what the doctors told you leading up to the surgery, because you guys had to wait a little bit. How long after he was born were they able to do the surgery? And then what did they tell you in those moments after the surgery upon whether it was successful or not?
Yeah. So going in with the CDH stuff, I ended up having a fetal MRI too, because they can't tell, they wanted to know if his liver was up as well, just because it's not, for non-medical, not a squishy organ. So that usually means a worse case scenario there. So I had the MRI when we did our initial appointment at CHOP. His liver was not up. Just about everything else on that left side was, though. So what happens is everything shifts to the side, to the opposite side. So they don't know, they can't see his left lung. They're not sure how much lung tissue is there, if it's growing while, he's continuing to grow for the next almost 20 weeks. So once he was born, it was kind of like, let's see what's going on. So that was a lot of unknown of what are we really working with here? Nobody knew. So once he was intubated, they did obviously a bunch of scans. Again, they said everything was still up there. So it was more so, let's see how he does on the ventilator. They ended up having to switch him to an oscillating ventilator, just because he wasn't clearing things well. But they can't do surgery when he's on an oscillating ventilator because it shakes him.
Right.
So that was our first little hiccup of, okay, I was really hoping, obviously, that we would get this fixed so we could see how bad things were. But now we got to get off of this first. So
Mm-hmm.
that was the goal there, and he was jaundice, and they thought he might have pneumonia because he did end up crying. But treated for all that. It took a couple days. He was kind of on and off it. He was fighting the ventilator too. So it was just a matter of figuring that piece out. Then they were able to
Mm-hmm.
get him back on the regular ventilator, and 12 days old, they said, it's go time. We can do this. They did the surgery in the NICU. Um, they, closed everything off. Everything was sterilized. We had to leave. The surgeon, Dr. Flake, was a very, I know, probably not the best for a surgeon name, but very stoic. Like this is his everyday when we
Sure.
initially met him, and I was like, I like this. I like that he is not wavering in this conversation at all. So the hole was a lot bigger than they thought.
Hmm.
So they had to put a mesh patch on him.
Yes.
I can remember Dr. Flake, he had piercing blue eyes, but everyone had masks on.
Sure.
So he walks out of the NICU, and you're impatiently waiting for this to be done. And he starts talking before we were close enough to hear him, but I could tell he was talking, but you can't see his mouth. So we're like running
Yep.
to hear. And, I'm short, he's a taller guy. And I can just remember looking up at him and him just being like, everything went well. It was bigger than we thought, but it went great.
Hmm.
Um, Theo was off of the ventilator in 3 days, and then off of all oxygen after probably 5 or 6 days.
Wow.
Um, which is not, I mean, we were extremely blessed. We were with parents, and everyone else in there had kids with CDHs that did not
Hmm.
go that way. So we were prepared, that was going to be our story as well. And then it was just a matter of he was really small because
Yeah.
it took a lot out of him, and he couldn't eat
Hmm.
for a very long time. So he was on TPN, IV nutrition, and then we just kind of slowly started incorporating milk and fortifying that with formula. And I became very conscious of how much time is he eating. He can't feed for too long because then we're burning more calories than we're taking in. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was a bit anxiety provoking because you had a nutritionist constantly. How long did he feed for? How much did he weigh
Sure.
before? How much after? And
Mm-hmm.
uh, that got a little overwhelming for a little
So
while there.
in the midst of the journey, I mean, you've talked a little bit about the unknowns, but I mean, there's so many things that it sounds cliche to say, step by step, day by day at times, but a lot of the reality for hospitalized families is it's true. The win is just to make it to the next day, and daily faithfulness is the key. So for you guys, like, not that you necessarily have a tip or a trick or anything, but how did you handle all of the unknowns in your journey?
We had like a schedule, I guess. I mean, not a schedule, but it was,
A routine.
yeah, and just kind of sticking to that routine so that at least you had control over one thing.
Mm,
And it was like, okay, I was pumping to try to keep supply and everything. So we were going to do that. We would get ready, make sure that, I at least had something to eat before we left and
mm-hmm.
got there for rounds and, did our game plan for the day with the team. I had a little NICU book of things that I would fill out every day because it just gave me something to do because
Mm-hmm.
can't hold your baby, you can't feed your baby. You're, just waiting for them to say what the next step is. So that was my way of keeping track of everything, and with the hope that I could look back on that and be like, wow, this is in the day to day, it seems like it is just very overwhelming, but not at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. As exhausting as it was daunting sitting there with zero control and just obviously seeing him fight, you know. But the other thing she did too was the journal thing, which instead of people texting you every day, wanting updates, she
a lot of people were following along on stuff. My aunt had made a GoFundMe because we were relocating and everything.
Sure.
And I think Reagan actually maybe told me about the journal.
Yeah.
Also to update online for people to then share, so that it was people felt like they were alongside you, but I could control what was being said. Because sometimes family, you give updates and they kind of get a little misconstrued there, and then it gets passed on, and then it's like playing telephone. You're like, whoa, I don't even know how that never happened.
Well, you
but
you raise a good point, because we always encourage families, if they're willing, to share, to type one update. And some people like copy paste in a text message. Others, like yourselves, it's real easy to just kind of update a care page of sorts, and then just encourage other family members, friends, and supporters to be like, here's a great thing for you to share. And I remember typing out my daughter's like kind of update. Kind of got into a rhythm when we were in the hospital for 3 months that every 48 hours, pretty much every other night, I'd give an update. And I think a lot of people were just like so thankful that they felt so blessed that I would share the journey. And I'm like, it became a mode of therapy for me too, to almost kind of, chronicle the journey, but just typing it out, everything that happened. Like, I think that that's good for us as parents too, because we can kind of emotionally process a little bit as we go. So I don't know if you found the same thing, but I enjoyed that process. And I know a lot of other families that enjoy kind of typing out what's going on so that people can stay updated, stay in prayer for your family, and help you out accordingly.
Hey friends, I'm Reagan Reeder, co-founder of Pressing On, and I love providing leadership to the organization as we uplift, resource, and coach hospitalized families, many of whom are on the journey of pediatric transplant. This season of the Pressing On podcast is sponsored by our friends at CODA, the Children's Organ Transplant Association. You can look them up online at coda.org. CODA helps children and young adults who need a life-saving transplant by providing fundraising assistance and family support. They're the trusted leader in supporting transplant families financially for a lifetime. CODA has helped raise more than $125 million for transplant-related expenses since 1986 and have seen approximately 2,400 CODA patients transplanted successfully. CODA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so funds raised to help meet the needs of transplant patients are not considered income for families, and CODA's services are provided at no charge to transplant families. As the mom of a transplant recipient, I'd highly recommend their services because I've seen firsthand how CODA's compassionate care and financial guidance has helped our family since my daughter's transplant, before, during, and after her transplant in 2017. For more information on how CODA might assist your family financially on the transplant journey, head to coda.org. That's COTA.org.
I know that knowing you guys personally as friends, like, your faith is really important to you. How did your faith shape how you saw everything that was going on with Theo? How did your faith shape your journey? Maybe talk a little bit about how that plays into how you see this story.
Yeah, I personally don't know how people go through something like that without faith, because it gets dark.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any source of light or hope, because we were told, Theo might not survive. It depends on, there could be complications, this, that, and, the other thing. But, even if the worst case scenario here happens, I have hope to see him.
Yeah.
And that was a big, not the easiest thing, not the, easiest pill to swallow, but it wasn't the end.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that I'm not in control of everything, and I like being in control of everything.
Sure.
But hindsight too, I had that mindset. I think we had that mindset, even though some days you had to remind yourself that you have that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, I I mean, it's undeniable that everything was taken care of to the everything. Where we stayed was perfect for what needed to happen, and just how things fell into place was, I mean, God took care of us.
Yeah.
You were
There's
in the
no
midst
other
of a
way
miracle.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You really were.
yeah, yeah.
Here's something
In
that,
the midst of a miracle and chaos.
yes. Yeah. There are lots of chaos in the midst of miracles for sure. Um, we're always interested in talking about like holistic health, that we all have parts to us that, we're physical and spiritual and emotional, relational, intellectual beings. And I'm always curious because I can think of my list of, oh, those are the things I paid close attention to while I was going through trauma and grief and loss and sorrow in the hospital. And then there's another big long list of things personally I didn't pay close attention to. I'm wondering if for one or both of you, are there physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, like were some of those things that were like, man, I really did pay close attention to this while I was going through that with Theo and we were in the hospital. And maybe is there one of those that's like, yeah, I didn't do a great job of whatever it is, fill in the blank. Does anything come to mind for either of you guys?
What I did pay attention to or tried to, especially during like the pregnancy, unknown things as well, was I made myself every night, even though I did not feel like it, write down 5 things that I was grateful for that day. And a lot of
Nice.
times it was something very simple, like the sun was out today, but it
Mm-hmm.
made me at least think of one thing that was even remotely positive. And I had a book, a devotional. I guess it was a devotional because again, I just needed something else to keep my mind off of the fact that I can't help right now.
Sure.
It was Beholding and Becoming, I think was the name of it. Very simple. It was very helpful. It was something that I did every day.
Yeah.
And it gave me something else to grasp. But Garrett can definitely talk about what we did not uh,
Go for it, man.
take care of ourselves.
We did not take care of ourselves physically
Very
Okay.
at
well.
all. We definitely let the
We were not eating.
our emotions got the best of
Yeah,
our
we were eating our emotions for
yeah.
sure.
We
Been there. Been
we
there. Yep.
we ate a lot of Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
And there
I
is
mean,
nothing
I'm still
wrong
paying
with
for it.
that. Favorite
I'm
flavor.
still paying for it, but
Favorite flavor
what's
Ben and
that?
Jerry's.
Peanut Butter World,
Nice.
Target.
Nice.
That's the only place I found that sells it.
Yeah, half baked for sure. It was not.
Uh
I mean,
There's
it
one
took a turn.
there is one small Target in a
Not good
not
area.
good area during a
Desperate times call for
not good
desperate
time of
measures.
life, and
at least you
it
had
was
one another
almost
to be able to devour the ice cream together, because I know Reagan and I have shared our story before, and like combined we eat for 2 people. The reality is she eats like nothing and I eat everything and then some. So like she wasn't sharing ice cream with me a lot of times because she wasn't hungry, but I'd want to eat my emotions too, like you guys were talking about.
yeah.
And that's
I don't get the stressful not eating stress. It's the eat everything stress.
I
So
Yeah.
normally do, but the fact that I was also pumping literally every 2 or 3 hours, I was like, I actually am starving, but I don't want to eat, so I'm gonna eat something that I know at least will taste really good. So a Philly cheesesteak wash it down with some Ben and Jerry's. Let's do
Mm-hmm.
it.
I mean, seriously. While we're on a lighthearted topic of food, we should just go into these rapid fire round questions that I have prepared because there's some fun questions. We do them with every podcast guest, just to kind of humanize, you guys a little bit and get to know you. So, here they are. Favorite family activity that you guys all enjoy together?
Boating.
Yes.
Boating, and for sure, we recently started getting the boys and taking our dog to go hiking and stuff at one of the local parks. So they are taking a very strong liking to that quickly.
If there's anybody local that wants to get out on the lake, where do you guys recommend? Where do you guys go?
We go to the Yawk Lake Reservoir out in Addison, PA. I mean,
And it's not dried up.
yeah, it's on the
Okay,
news now.
nice.
So dried up.
Which one of you
But
drives the boat more often?
Oh, you do not want me driving.
she knows the very basics for an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gets knocked out, I'll get us where we need to go, but it's not going to be pretty.
But
Mm.
stressful run down the lake. She does not want any part of.
All right, well, here's the second question.
Super swimming, so it's been a lot of fun too.
That's awesome. I love it. We spend a lot of time on the lake as well. I totally get it. Favorite snack that can always be found in you guys' house?
Oh, well, for the boys, Cheez-Its for sure. They're salty kind of guys. Ice cream, obviously, we've carried that over.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, I love it. Salty snacks for us as well. Favorite movie. Now, this could be very different. It might not just necessarily be something that you like individually, but if you guys are going to sit down, watch a movie together, favorite movie that you can agree on as a couple?
Oh, not family appropriate, but My Cousin Vinny.
Nice. Nice. Garrett, you approve?
Yeah, it's favorite.
All right.
I mean, if we're sitting down to watch something, it's usually something funny,
Love it.
but that would be the one if we had to pick one.
Awesome.
Not with the
And
kids.
Yeah, obviously.
Sure.
This is more of a serious question, but I love to ask everybody that's on the podcast this during this time. What is your definition of perseverance?
Just keep going. You think you can't, and you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, or crawling, whatever you got to do that day. Just keep moving forward a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Again, back to the fixing situation. It was definitely a matter of just keeping your head down because you knew. It sounds terrible, but I had to treat most of that like a job. Like
Sure.
even the back and forth and running to get lunches and like I had to make it a task
Yeah.
or else I didn't feel like I had any purpose. So even from the apartment hunting to loading the car and unloading the car and somehow getting 5 times more things in the car when we left Philly than we took out to Philly. Like, I mean, it just keeping your head down. And for me, it was to not let my emotions get the best of me because I never wanted to get angry over the situation, or question God in any way. So that was a big thing for me that I never wanted to ask the why question.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it sapping dust? Like I never wanted to do that, and I don't think I did. Thank goodness. I just
If
I
you
didn't.
do, it's okay too.
Yeah,
It was
it's a
just a personal
natural
thing for me,
question.
but I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a thing for me that this is just we we are in this situation. We are handling this situation, and
Yeah.
I that's all it was. Just keeping your head down and doing it. That's
Mm-hmm. It sounds
pretty
like
much is what I would
perseverance
say.
for you sounded like controlling the few things that you can control and really just developing a routine of like, here's the things that I can do each day. That's a great way to persevere together. In closing, I know that you guys mentioned a few things throughout that were really, really helpful that I think are definitely going to speak to other families that are spending time in the hospital. But do you guys have any specific advice that you would give to parents that need to travel specifically to another city for their child's health care? Anything that you haven't mentioned to this point? Because that's a unique story and a unique journey of having to travel to another city. Any tips or advice that you would give families?
It's hard because it was the blessing and the curse of having months leading up to it. Like, found out in February, we didn't leave to the end of May.
Sure.
So, like, we had time to plan and organize. But if you're thrown into a situation and, hey, we got to move like next week or this weekend, like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I would have handled that as a more of a planner.
Mm-hmm.
You're not hanging out there. You're take what you absolutely need. I mean, I think the one nurse at one point joked with Garrett, like, dude, is that the only shirt you have? Because he had like the office.
I had an office short sleeve shirt and an office long sleeve shirt, and like that was my long sleeve shirt for the hospital, and I had a hoodie, but
Mm-hmm.
like,
because the hospitals are always cold.
yeah,
So like you want to be comfortable. You're there all day doing
it's
nothing.
like we came like,
We don't live here.
yeah, like, I
And
brought
then
like six
she felt
shirts.
bad. Yeah. But yeah,
That's
just take what
funny.
you need because you're just getting through it. So it's not going to be perfect. You can always get something. Or if somebody wants to help you, that's a tangible way. Hey, we don't have this. This is what we need. And I'm sure somebody would be more than happy to fill that need.
People always want to help, but again, you sometimes might need to
Direct that help.
direct that help a little bit,
Yeah.
which don't feel bad about that, or else
Yeah.
you're gonna get help you don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last question. Is there any specific resources that come to mind that have been beneficial for you guys in your medical journey that you'd like to share as we close?
I think the big thing is find what works for you. A lot of people give a lot of advice and stuff, and it's great. And you can take that and use it, or take it and let it go out the other ear. You don't
Sure.
have to take everything in. You're already taking in a lot. So, if support groups work for you and that's something that you like, that's great. It was something that did not help me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was the medical side of things, diving too deep into things can start to have you asking questions. You're 10 steps ahead of where you need to be. So just be mindful of advice because everybody's story is different too. So especially in a diagnosis that there's a lot of unknowns. So,
Mm-hmm.
Theo's story is not anyone else's. So
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of take it for what it is, take bits and pieces and piece together what you need from various things. It's just not a one size fits all.
Well, Garret and Tara Welsh, thank you guys so much for joining the podcast. Just really want to affirm you guys, not just as individuals and as a family, but you guys have persevered through a lot and you've persevered well. You've encouraged me personally, my family, and I'm really looking forward to this episode getting out there so that you can encourage other hospitalized families. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to join the podcast.
Thanks, Richie.
Thank
We
you.
love you guys and we're so grateful for everything that you guys are doing.
Yeah, you guys do great things. So very thankful for you.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Pressing On podcast. If you found this episode inspiring and helpful in your journey of perseverance, we appreciate you sharing it with others. A great way to support our work of serving hospitalized families is sharing the podcast with family and friends, posting about it on social media, or leaving us a rating and review. Don't forget to visit our website at pressingon.org for our free programs and resources for hospitalized families. Follow along the Pressing On journey on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Pressing On PGH. As we all press on through healthcare challenges, we need to stick together. Until next time, know that you are not alone. You are seen, valued, and loved. Keep pressing on.